All right. Welcome to technical session number 32. This is going to be our first 10:02 technical session. For a mental note, as we're going through technical sessions, anything you see 32 and above is 10:02.
Sorry, Mr. Kelly, can you drop the website? I just came late.
No problem.
Thank you.
If you see anything 31 and below, that is 10:01 material. So 32 and above is 10:02 material, 31 and below is 10:01. But again, remember, we kind of jump around on some of this stuff so that we can kind of keep it paired up as best we can with Coursera. So today, we're going to be getting our introduction to Windows, some of the things that make each of these different, what makes them the same. One of these on the screen was a huge mistake, but they came back and corrected it. We do have to be aware of things like upgrade paths and stuff like that. So we're going to be talking about a lot of this stuff as we go through. By the end of this, we should be able to describe the purpose and function of an operating system, identify the main features of a Microsoft operating system. We're strictly dealing with Microsoft. We have another technical session where we get into other operating systems, and compare and contrast many of the features between Windows 7, 8, 8.1, and 10. Key BSMs we want to keep in mind during this particular technical session will be adaptability and future orientation. We have gone over these quite a few times, so I think we're all kind of in that mindset right now. All right, out of the gate, Danielle, could you please read for us, what is an operating system?
Definition: an interface between a computer and a user. It manages your computer hardware and files while providing an environment for applications to run through either a graphical user interface, GUI, or command line interface, CLI.
Excellent. So from a hardware perspective, you know how the motherboard connects all of our peripherals together, right? That's how all these things are able to talk to each other. So that's what the motherboard does. An operating system does this on a software level. It allows all the applications, all the other things to talk to each other and creates a centralized platform for it. And the two ways we're used to seeing it is the GUI, or graphical user interface. That's what you typically see when you're looking at Windows. And you're able to click on the icons and all that fun stuff, or CLI, which is your command line interface, which if you've done the Linux labs, you're now becoming very familiar with those, where it's just straight commands as you're typing them in, and it's more of a blank slate, not a whole lot of like mouse interaction or things like that. Questions so far? All right, components of an operating system.
I got a question.
Yeah, Gali.
Is the link on the Slack supposed to be the same as this one we're doing now? Because the one in the Slack is installing Windows, and this one is introduction to.
I made a mistake. I just posted the correct one.
Okay,
I tend to transpose them for some reason.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about
I
that.
apologize.
It's Windows, we just, All right, so we have two main components that we deal with regards to an operating system. Ogali, can you please tell us about the kernel?
I should go ahead and read, you say?
Please, just about the kernel, number one.
Okay, the kernel. This is the core of the OS. It has the most responsibility in how the user interacts with the hardware. Hardware application operating under the OS cannot get to hardware devices without the shell passing the request to the kernel.
Okay, so the kernel, that's like the heart of it, the center of it.
Okay.
And if it needs to talk to anything else, it has to pass through the shell. So what is the shell? Tomas, can you please tell us about the shell?
The shell provides commands and procedures that programs use to do the actions they need. This is done through different interface tools such as the control panel or Windows Explorer that have an icon-driven interface for the user to click.
Excellent. So we make requests to the shell, it communicates with the kernel, and then that interaction can take place. The example that they love to use is like a restaurant, where the shell is like the waitstaff, where you're making requests of the waitstaff, and they're taking it in and bringing stuff back from the cook, where the cook is actually doing the preparation and getting the meals ready for you and sending that back out through the waitstaff to you, who's the operator trying to communicate with this operating system. Does that kind of make sense? So you have the kernel, which is the cook, and then you have the shell, which is the waitstaff, and the shell is the communication medium between you and the kernel itself. All right, so we have a few basic categories with regards to operating systems. 4 main ones that they like to talk about for this particular session. So, Bernard, can you please tell us about servers real quick?
Servers allow for the sharing of information and applications by workstation OSs, optimized for background processes used for access by clients.
Okay. So it's kind of sharing info and applications. Basically, at a basic level, what servers do is they share resources and information. So that would be our server operating system. Now, workstations. Joyce, can you tell us about a workstation, please?
Workstation allows end users to access info and applications on server OS, as well as independently optimized for foreground processes.
Okay. So workstations allow you to access a lot of these server operating systems and applications if you wish. Next, mobile. Melody, can you please tell us about mobile operating systems?
Found on mobile devices, generally optimized for touch-based devices where one program is used at a time.
Excellent, thank you. So mobile, it's the ones we typically most often interact with on our phones, tablets, whatever, on a regular basis, touchscreen enabled for the most part. And again, we can only interact with a single program at a time, though on some tablets, you're able to do split screen and have 2 open and interacting at the same time. That was not as common when this was written. So real life, many tablets can do split screen. With regards to this, only one is used at a time. So real life versus A+. Cloud-based. Stephanie, can you please read for us?
Cloud-based, a new breed of OS, considered stateless since personal data is not permanently stored on the device but in the cloud. Mobile and cloud-based OSs are similar except where the data is stored.
There you go. So it's more of a lightweight operating system. It's not going to be as heavy duty as like a workstation, which would be like more like a full version of Windows or something like that. It's going to be more of a stripped down version so that it's easier to communicate, and it's going to require, cloud-based is going to require an internet connection in order to be able to operate, period. There is no other option for that. So thank you, Stephanie. All right, main functions of all operating systems. Every operating system shares 4 main functions that it must serve. It provides a user interface. So we have to have some ability to be able to interact with it in order to get functionality out of it and make the system useful, right? You know, so in order for that to do that, it has to provide a way for us to interface with the software itself. And again, that can take the appearance of a GUI interface or a CLI interface. So graphical user like Windows, or CLI, which would be a little bit more like Linux, or PowerShell inside Windows, things like that. You'll become more and more comfortable and familiar with these as we go through the Coursera courses and some of the labs we do. Yes, Danielle.
I have a question with Linux, right? When you're actually using Linux, do you only use the code, or is it some picture comes up after you finish the code?
Honestly, it depends on the distro you're using, and which is basically like the flavor of Linux you're using at that point. Some have GUI interfaces for a lot of applications, but you still have to come down to command line for more, you know, robust usage. Some are completely command line based. It just depends on the type. There's a ton of different versions of Linux. When we get into other operating systems, we'll talk about that a little more. So you can make it look like your Windows desktop environment to a degree, but it's nice. It's an open source software, so there's a ton of stuff you can do with it. Just the version of Linux we're using is strictly command line. And remember, the classroom Linux expert is Oscar. I'm just kidding. He is an expert in it, but you know, don't hound him with questions, please. So yes, we need a functional user interface so that we can interact with our applications and software, so that we can utilize our peripherals, applications, all that kind of fun stuff. The other thing is it needs to be able to manage files. It allows you to add, remove, delete, move, whatever files. So you have to be able to add or remove this stuff, data of some sort. It also needs to manage applications. It allows you to use, run, shut down any programs, you know, that you need to. It also can manage your hardware. So not only the applications, but it has to be able to communicate with the hardware, your hard drives, your printers, your, you know, webcams, microphones, all that fun stuff. It needs to be able to access, communicate, and utilize all the hardware that you have need of using for your computer. Most used operating systems. This is just kind of sad. So this big blue hunk here, which is about, I'd say about 85% roughly, that's Windows. Which brings me to the point. It's not the best software that wins, it's the most adopted. When Apple and Windows were first rising up and starting to gain their own, Microsoft focused heavily on business applications, making it very functional for companies. And then people, when they use something at the office and they have the ability to use something similar at home, it just makes it easier. So you're typically going to utilize something that's more comfortable for you. So you may use Windows at work, Windows at home, just because it's easier. If you have to transfer files, it's a no-brainer. You don't have to worry about compatibility issues. The interface is the same. It's just, it works. The other roughly, I think it's about 10%. You have OS X, which is Mac or Apple product. And then you get into like 3% is Linux-based systems, all the various distros together. And then you get into others. This was as of 2018. I agree with that, Oscar. They've definitely lost their innovative edge since he passed away. All right, Windows versions. Here's some of the latest ones going back to 2001. You had XP, which was hands down their most popular version that they had. It was built off of a Unix platform. It was extremely stable. It worked beautifully. Most companies loved it so much, they never wanted to get rid of it. In fact, Windows had to basically tell them, look, we're not supporting it anymore. We're not giving you any more security updates. We're not doing anything anymore. And then companies started to begrudgingly update. Although scarily, many ATM machines were still using Windows XP up until recently. You know, they were about 5+ years out of security updates, still being used on ATMs. Then we get into Windows Vista, which caught a lot of flack. A lot of people did not like it because this was the next major update from 7. A lot of people just really had a problem with it. So 2 years later, they came out with Windows 7, which was almost identical to Vista, but they made the interface look more similar to XP, so people were happy with it. Gets you kind of a little bit into social engineering. And then the big mistake happened, Windows 8, which we will get into that. And then the apology, which was 8.1, and then Windows 10, which was the primary system up until just a few, like 6 months ago, I believe. All right. So several features that we're going to be talking about with 7, 8, 8.1, and 10. We're going to go over a lot of the commonalities and then point out some various differences with the types. So we're going to go over your desktop, your Explorer, some of the stuff, name changes over time. We're going to be talking about some support tools, 32-bit architecture versus 62-bit architecture. Security tools, we're going to start touching base on that. They do have some automatically installed ones on Windows. Event viewer, which is where we go to scrounge, look through our logs whenever anything goes bad, and then ready boost. So first we'll get into the desktop. Look at this real quick. Talk about a few different things here. The start menu, basically various things in the geography of Windows that we need to be aware of and understand, start using the proper terms for. Start developing and utilizing that common language. So here's basically a map of your Windows 7 screens. Thankfully, this presentation is a lot of pictures. So here's the map of your screen down in your bottom corner here. This is specific for Windows 7. You have your start button down here. It looks like that little window. Immediately to the right of that, you would have your File Explorer, and then you have pinned programs. These would be programs that you utilize on a regular basis, and you can actually right-click it and say Pin to Taskbar, which means it will always be there ready for you to use. So your pinned programs would immediately be over here. The taskbar is this entire bottom bar down here. And it can either be static, where it stays there all the time, or you can have it hide if you're not using it. So it'll hide and kind of give you a little bit more real estate, or, looking at your picture that you have for your background, what have you. Now, over off to the bottom right-hand side, where you have your clock, network, settings, you might get some alerts and things like that. You have what is called your notification area or system tray. It goes by both names. So notification area or system tray. And then we should become very familiar with this background like this. Many of us have seen that growing up. We understand that those little pictures in the back are icons, and those lead us to the applications we want to use on a regular basis, right? Now, I know you're sitting there thinking, what was Windows 7 biggest achievement? What sets it apart from all other versions of Windows? It's Arrow. It is this translucent window that you can slightly see through and see what's behind it and all that stuff. I do not know why they love asking about Arrow. That's all it is. And that is the big thing for Windows 7's Arrow, the translucent windows. So, any questions so far on this page? All right, Windows 8, the big error. Shamika, can you read to us about Windows 8 real quick in 8.1?
Windows 8 and 8.1 desktop. In both Windows 8 and 8.1, the user interface is different from earlier versions of Windows. The start menu has removed and the desktop replaced with a new look called Metro UI. The look and the feel of the desktop was designed to resemble that of a mobile device.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So they got rid of the start button. So instant result, everyone panicked. They changed the look drastically. People panicked even more. What Windows was attempting to do was create a seamless interface between a phone, a tablet, and a computer. Here's the problem. You can't make a phone or a tablet significantly more powerful processing-wise, right? But you can dumb down an operating system so that it works on all three. So this was a very stripped down operating system that was not near as functional as its predecessors. It was such a drastic change visually. People don't like change. You know, that basically the entire fan base of Windows was just an open revolt. They hated it. So Windows came out with 8.1. They brought back the start menu. They still had these tiles, but the tiles were then hidden in the start menu rather than it being the whole screen. And people were like, okay, we kind of forgive you. Does anybody remember back when eBay used to be yellow, like the whole screen was yellow? Does anybody remember that? Nobody remembers it? Man, I'm old. Okay, there we go. I got one. Greg remembers it. That or he felt bad for me. So originally the screen, like the background and all that stuff on eBay was all yellow. And the developers originally thought they liked it, but they ended up like, it was harder on the eyes. They didn't really care for it. So they decided one day they were going to make it white so that it was easier to look. It was just like a regular user interface. So during one update, they changed the interface from yellow to white, and they got thousands and thousands of complaints. I hate it. It doesn't look right. I love the old interface. This is new and I don't do new. Please don't change my life. So eventually the people that own eBay, you know, they're like, okay, fine. So they changed it back to yellow and everybody got quiet. But then something interesting happened. Over the next year, every day, they took the website one shade closer to white over the course of a year. At the end of the year, the website was where they wanted it to be. It was white, and not a single person complained.
Didn't know that story. Okay.
So, social engineering. Drastic changes tend to get people upset. But if you can do very, very minor changes over a period of time, most people don't notice and they become acclimated to the changes over time. Yes, Gali.
Is the GUI the same thing as the icons, or that's like two different type of words?
No, you're right there. The GUI is basically this. It's seeing the pictures, the icons, me interacting with it with my mouse, like I'm pointing and clicking at things, or the screen on my phone, like the little icons on my phone and all that stuff. That is GUI, graphical user interface. CLI or command line interface is where you just have like the black screen with the lines of text and you're typing in all your commands.
Okay, thank you.
So that is CLI versus GUI. Yes, Kevin.
I'm just curious, like when did Windows Vista come out?
Vista, I think it was like 2007. Let me look.
Was that the one after XP?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
That to me was the biggest
Yeah.
mistake. I was actually working in that time period.
2007.
Yeah, it was
I
the
didn't
worst.
really like that.
No, it was the worst. Business wise, I think it was actually worse than 8. Like,
yeah.
Nobody in the corporate environment wanted that one.
Well, nobody got away from XP, I think, until like Windows
7
8.1 was out or something like that.
Yeah, because like XP was like, I remember using XP for a long time.
Yes. I mean, and it's funnily enough, I think the last version of Windows I used was XP prior to getting into this class because my company refused to update. And so when I was going through this class, I never saw 7. No, Vista was the last one I worked on. I never saw 7. I never saw 8. I never saw 8.1. I never saw 10. And I got into this class and COVID hit and I had no Windows computer to work on. So I quite literally had to do all of 10.02 without a Windows computer straight from the book.
Yeah, mine after XP was 8, and then from 8 then I just had like, because that's when I got my first laptop was when 8 came out. And then from then on I just used whatever they updated it to.
Okay. I mean, 10 was pretty good. A lot of people seem to be pretty happy with 10. But with regards to 8 and 8.1, the big things you need to remember is it's the tiles for 8.
Yeah.
The start menu went away. And this is the biggie, Metro UI. So 8 is when Metro UI came into place. 7's big claim to fame, Arrow. It seems like not much, but they're proud of it.
way less buggy than Vista was, though. Way less.
That is true. Let me get into Windows 10. Much sleeker. It still utilized a bit of the Metro UI within the tiling system in the start menu and stuff like that. Bit of a smoother interface. People tended to be a little bit happier with 10, especially after 8 and 8.1. After that, I think they probably could have given them something really horrible and they'd have been okay with it at that point. I was trying to keep it PG. That is a big gamble right now, Ebony. I'd let him work out some of the bugs a little bit more. Some people love 11. Some people really hate it. We're getting a mixed results here. Stephanie says 11 is awesome. And Rachel's like, maybe not yet.
I have a question. When you upgrade, can you downgrade? Or you can...
I love that question. Can you downgrade? Depends on your restore points. We will get into that. Otherwise, you may have to do a full reinstall to go backwards. But yeah, you can roll back if you have restore points and backups. So it is possible, yes.
Even on Apple?
Yes, absolutely. They get mad at me because like when they do a new upgrade, I want to make sure all of my apps are going to be okay before I'll upgrade. Because they've killed so many of my favorite applications through upgrades. All right, so the start button has kind of evolved over time. And it, in general, just provides a place for you to search, access programs, files, shut down, restarts, system, get to your libraries, all that kind of fun stuff. And you can access your control panel. Speaking is hard. Control panel, and system settings, all that kind of fun stuff. So you can see, the slight variations of how it appears, even when you get into 10, where it's a little boxier. So, all right.
On the left it was what did you say, XP, and on the right it was 7?
Of these?
Yeah, which version was that?
I think this is like 7 and a Vista, like Vista and 7.
Okay.
And then you had 10 here, which was more like a box. All right. Pinning and unpinning. Let's see here, Rahel, can you please read for us?
Pinning and unpinning. Having easy to find files, folders, and programs located on the taskbar is done through pinning. Programs and files folders can be pinned to the taskbar or start menu for faster access simply by right-clicking the program and choosing Pin to Taskbar or Pin to Start.
There you go. Thank you very much. So programs you use every day, all the time, so you don't have to go searching for them every time. You can just pin them to your taskbar. In fact, since Windows wants to use their products, they may go ahead and pin some things to your taskbar for you, just to make the choice easier. Things like Edge. And I'm still confused why people use Edge.
Edge annoys me.
Yeah.
Because like sometimes I'll click it by accident and then I'll be like, oh no. It's like that. It's like that one family member at the party you don't want to interact with. Then they make eye contact with you.
And you accidentally butt dial them.
Yeah.
No, it's it doesn't play well with others. There's it's very buggy. I'm not a big fan of it. But pinning and unpinning to the start or the taskbar or start menu. Gadgets. This was a Windows 7 deal. Steven, can you read for us, please?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I absolutely can.
Yeah, gadgets are mini programs that can be placed on the desktop windows, allowing them to run quickly and letting you personalize the PC, clock, weather, and so on. In 2011, Microsoft announced it had no longer supporting the development or unloading of new gadgets.
Excellent, thank you. So tiny programs that serve small purposes or similar purposes, and you could pin them to your desktop. Kind of nice, add a little bit of functionality, a little whimsy for Windows. It was, a little bit of a, change out of what they were used to. So we could see, I gotta stop saying that, calendar, clock, you could track stocks, things like that. Weather, all that kind of fun stuff. It wouldn't be like big cumbersome programs. It was just quick little, smaller, size programs that you would interact with. Oh, the beloved Arrow. Let's see here. Golly, can you read, please, about Arrow and all of its wonders?
You calling me?
Oh, golly.
Oh, golly. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's too close.
Arrow. Yeah, I know. I'd be also every time you call her name, so I'd be like, "Is that me?" Arrow. The Arrow interface offer a glass design that include translucent windows. It was new with Windows Vista and is available in every edition of Windows 7 except Starter.
I mean, and just look at it. The wonder of Arrow.
Wait, what's starter?
That was like a economy version, so it was a stripped down version of Windows.
Oh.
So we'll get into some of the versions here in a little bit. So are we all good on Arrow? Or we're never going to miss that question on any test, what Arrow is. That's a gimme.
So all they did for that update from, I guess, from the up to Windows 7 was just changing the arrow?
Don't downplay the significance of this monumentous achievement.
I feel like you could have just done that with your display bar or something, just like play with it and like.
Hey, the programming that went into this.
Imagine in the meeting where somebody had to talk and they're pitching it, they're like, this is the best thing yet.
It's transparent.
It's like Windows, but you can see through it.
It is transparent. That's a notch. Oh.
Like, is it clear? No. It's foggy. So you can almost see through it.
Oh man.
Okay. Sorry, I have such a hard time with this one. That's the big achievement for Windows 7. So Arrow. Right. Taskbar. The taskbar is the entire bar at the bottom, and it's broken up into several chunks. You have your quick launch area right here, which has your pinned applications. You got your start menu, and then you have your currently open applications that you're working on down here. And then finally you get to your notification, also known as what?
System tray.
System tray. Thank you. So notification area, also known as your system tray. System tray, you can see date, time, you got network settings, battery life if you're on a laptop, volume control. You know, if I'm talking, you probably want to turn it down. Connection status, printer status, all that kind of fun stuff in that system tray / notification area. Windows desktop personalization. See here. Diying, can you please read for us?
Personalization of the desktop can be accessed through the control panel, applet personalization, or by right-clicking the desktop and choosing personalization.
All right, there we go. And then in here, you can set all kinds of themes. They had some really cool ones back in the day where you could pick like a nautical theme and it would give you like different, types of icons and stuff like that. If you have a favorite movie, like Marvel or something like that, they might have, different icons or characters from the movie, or things like that, color schemes, so it kind of lets you personalize it a little bit, make it a little bit more your own. Some companies don't allow you to do this. They have like, here's the 3 backgrounds you can choose from. And here's the 2 personalization levels you can use, because sometimes it can be a little disorienting for an IT person coming in and they're using oddball icons that can really slow you down in trying to troubleshoot a problem. So, what's designed for a touch interface? Oh, Windows 8. Okay, yeah. Windows 8 is almost completely designed for touch. Thank you. Sorry, I missed that piece. All right, Windows Explorer. Let's see here. Rebecca, can you please read to us about Windows Explorer?
Sure. By checking on the icon that looks like a file folder on the taskbar, the Window Explorer is accessed. It provides a hierarchical structure for files, folders, libraries, and drives. Mm-hmm. The file location bar at the top will slow the file or folder path. Located on the drive, specify like how a browser looks.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
You want me to continue? Okay.
Oh, we'll talk about this one for real quick, and then we will continue. Yeah, I struggle with hierarchical a lot. I have to say it like 6 times to myself before I speak it out loud. So trust me, I get it. One key note to take in mind up here. Windows Explorer was renamed File Explorer with the release of Windows 8. This is one of the fun things Windows likes to do. They like to rename things, and unfortunately, sometimes they rename things similar to older things, and just leads to mass hysteria. So please take note of that. Windows Explorer was renamed File Explorer with the release of Windows 8. That is important. All right, JR, I know you were trying to escape or hoping it would never come around. Can you read about libraries for us, please?
Library is a centralized location to manage files from multiple locations. By default, Windows 7 has 4 standard libraries: documents, music, pictures, and videos. Libraries can be created, accessed, and manipulated here for a more personalized method to access folders, files that are frequently used.
Thank you very much. So it kind of lets you dive into things like if you save pictures in this folder, and then you save more pictures off in another folder, all over the place, and it gets kind of scattered throughout your drive and different files and folders depending on your organization. The library allows you to bring all of those similar types of files together at one time. So you can look at all of your music that's stored on your computer in one place and not have to go to each of these individual files to try to look it up. All of your pictures, all of your videos, all of your documents. It just makes searching for something, if you forgot where you put it, a lot easier. And especially if you can't remember the exact name you used. I have never done that this week. So Windows Explorer hierarchical breakdown, meaning you could sit there and start at your hard drive, click down to your user. Once you're in your user, click down to your documents. Once you get into your documents, you can say, click on my A+ folder, and then be like, okay, I want my 1001, click on the next folder down. So each time you're clicking, you're drilling down one more folder, getting down to the documents that you need. That's what they mean by that. So
that's on all Windows, right?
Typically, yes. They do have an Explorer option that they allow you to do something like this. And then the other way to look for files is the library version, where you're looking at files based on the file type. So I'm looking at just documents or just music or just videos. Does that make sense? So it's the difference between the File Explorer or Windows Explorer and the library. All right, file structure. Let's see here, Greg, can you read for us, please?
Sorry about that. Double muted. Okay.
I appreciate the safety.
Okay, users are authenticated through a user account, which will then provide their computer settings called a user profile. The set of files and directories in each user profile will be specific to that user, while system files will be the same from user profile to user profile.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay.
No, you can go ahead.
All right,
continue.
General file information. File naming. There are 2 parts to a file name. The main part identifies the contents of the file, and the extension identifies a file type. File names have a maximum allowed characters of 255, including spaces. Oh, actually, I didn't know that. Special characters not allowed.
He's going to start using really long file names.
Right?
Just in case nobody caught that. He was just like, oh yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna test it out. Okay, all right. File extension. This is what tells, sorry, the OS what type of file it is so that the associated program will open it. It is the last characters, following the period, in a file name such as docx, .exe, .zip, or .txt path. This is where the file lives in the directory. Example, C:\user, so forth, so on. Get it?
Yeah. So thank you very much, Greg. So basically what it is like, so you have the two parts to your file. So it's like, you know, like I love CompTIA, you know, that'll be your file name. And then you would have, you know, .txt to let the computer know that it was a text file. You know, or .doc, D-O-C, you know, let it know it was a document, or it was a picture, you know, from a screenshot, it'd be .jpeg, JPEG. So that little piece at the end tells you what type of file it is so that the system knows how they're going to interact with that file. And then we get down to the path, say, this is the file you're looking for. So right here, lesson.t32.pptx, PowerPoint. Now, if we were using the hierarchical file structure, we would first click on users, and then that backslash. Once we go into the user file, we would click on the file that said username. So that would be our next file we would click on. And then desktop, and then A+, and then PowerPoints, and then finally lesson 32. So that's what they mean by the path. That would be each file in succession that you would need to click on to get to this document. Now, if we were in a command line interface and we wanted to type in this file, if we were at just at the C prompt or the C drive right here, so we only had this, we could type in all of this here and that would take us straight to the file. So knowing the path tells your computer exactly where to look at it if you're using a CLI, or lets you know exactly on which files you need to click on to get to the file you want to access. So that is what they mean by the path. Does that make sense? All right, directories. Let's see here. Nitchet, can you please read about directories for us, please?
Directories give a hierarchical view of folders and files specified on the different drives available for the system. There is a method to organize the files in a meaningful way and can be found in the Windows Explorer window. A folder that contains other files and folders located within a directory is a subdirectory.
Wonderful, thank you. So when you put a file inside a file, you have your directory, and then you put that file, another file inside of it, it becomes a subdirectory of that original directory. So that makes sense. Thank you, Mitchell. All right, OneDrive. Nessinet, can you please read to us about OneDrive?
OneDrive. Window Explorer might also list OneDrive as if it is an external drive. OneDrive is a cloud-based storage feature property from Microsoft where user can store files to allow more space on the hard drive.
Excellent, thank you very much, Nessinet. So OneDrive is your cloud-based storage. They will give you a certain amount of free storage on there. Beyond that, they want you to pay for it. And that is Microsoft proprietary OneDrive. What's Google's version?
Google Drive.
Google Drive, awesome. Is Apple, around there too, or did they not want to go to the party?
iCloud.
iCloud, there we go. So we have iCloud for Apple, Google Drive for Google, and OneDrive for Microsoft.
Oh, so
Yes,
is it like is the iCloud? I know the iCloud is specifically for Apple. Is that different from the cloud itself, or is that like just like the whole
It is
cloud?
their,
for Apple?
okay, well, first, the cloud is not a cloud. It's just somebody else's computer. iCloud is like their offering of that type of service.
Okay.
So like it is a cloud service and they're offering you, some of that service. They're giving you X amount of storage for free and you can pay for more if you want. And you can still use it if you're using a Microsoft computer. You can still use OneDrive if you're using a Mac. This is still, you can kind of pick and choose which ones you want to use. And you're kind of diving into whatever cloud service you prefer.
Okay.
It essentially creates extra storage space that's not stored on your computer. And then, one of those things, like if you have, your important stuff stored on there, like work files, and you're, traveling on business, you forgot to download it to your computer, you can access it on your cloud drive and then pull it down to whatever system you need.
Okay.
So that would be OneDrive.
I have a question. How safe is the cloud?
That is a wonderful question. And my answer is it depends. We will talk about that when we get to virtualization and stuff like that. I would never put anything really sensitive on the cloud, especially considering Google basically alerted the whole world that they scan your cloud folders. So, and then Apple was about to do this, but the backlash was so horrific that they decided not to. But we'll talk about that when we get to security. So. All right. Changing our Explorer settings. Let's see here. Jamari, can you please read for us, please?
The toolbar in Windows Explorer contains many options located in the Organize tab, including changing the layout and the folder and search options. The folder and search options has 3 tabs: General, View, and Search. General allows changing from double-clicking a file to open it to a single click and changing the navigation pane and how browsing folders should appear. View, this tab has advanced settings, especially related files and folders and how they appear, including showing hidden files and folders. There's also an option to reset to default settings. Search gives specifics to how a user wants to search for a file or folder.
Excellent. Thank you, Jamari. So General kind of gives you like ways you can look at it. Why on earth you would want to go from double click to single click? Every time you touch the file, it would open up, and that just seems like that would be really annoying to me. But obviously I'm not everybody, and I don't believe everybody has the exact same, preferences I do with regards to this. So, but in there you can do this. View lets you look at things that like big icons, medium icons, a list, so you can kind of fit it to your, personal preferences, how you like to look at things. Some people just love the list. I'm one of those people. Some people, the icons make a lot more sense. And, it's more comforting or easier to navigate through that type of system. All right. Managing files and folders. Yuki, can you please read for us?
Managing files and folders. Creating and changing file or folder attributes can be accomplished by right-clicking the file and choosing properties from the dialog box. From the General tab under Properties, changes can be made to the file's name, which program opens the file, and attributes to make the file read-only or hidden. This dialog box also shows the file's path in the directory, the size of the file, and when it was created, modified, and last accessed.
Excellent, thank you. So not every file we put on our computer, especially if we have multiple people who use the same computer, right? Remember I was talking about system settings versus user settings? So you have the system settings, which is kind of like the overarching, system rules. And then you have individual users where you can kind of personalize it to yourself. So if you have multiple people using the computer, you may not want them seeing all of your pictures or all of your documents and stuff like that. So you can make it so they can't see any of them. Or maybe you want them to have access to where they can just read it, but not change it. And maybe they can read it, change it, but not delete it. So we can adjust these settings within our general properties with each file and allow or disallow people the ability to see, read, and or modify the files. Some of them you can just see they're there, but you can't see what's in them. So that's where we would be, one of the things we would modify within the files as well. All right. Part 2, managing files and folders. Cedric, can you please read for us?
The Security tab assigns permissions to specific groups or user and designate who has access to edit, modify, view, read, and write. Should I continue?
Yes, please, sir.
Okay. Under the Details tab, more information related to a file with an option to remove personal information from the specified file. The Previous Versions tab is used when restore has been enabled to recover a file in the event of accidental deletion. Temporary files can use system resources when they are not deleted regularly. They are written constantly to hold data for a short time but can stay until deletion. Disk cleanup can be a useful tool here for removal.
Wonderful, thank you, Cedric. So we can delete things and they aren't necessarily gone, because there's usually a multi-phase process to make a file unrecoverable. And that's where disk cleanup can be your best friend or your worst enemy. You run disk cleanup after you've deleted files and something you did accidentally, it will clean out your recycle bin, it'll clean out all your temporary files, your cache files, everything. It's a nice feature to free up space on your hard drive, but if you've accidentally deleted something, that can make life unpleasant. So it is a nice idea to double check your recycle bin and stuff like that from time to time. Make sure you haven't accidentally deleted something you wanted to keep before you go ahead and empty those folders out. All right, Windows Support Tools Overview. Current versions of Windows only have these support tools available through downloading either from Installation Desk or through Microsoft's website. And it kind of gives you a list of helpful tools you can download. So you got your application compatibility toolkit, upgrade advisors. So it's one of those things. If I'm, am I going to be able to upgrade from the version I have to the version I want? And will I lose all my files in the process? Because some upgrades allow you to move all your files and folders with you. Other upgrades are what is called a clean install, where you lose everything and have to reinstall everything on your system. So Update Advisor is one of those cool tools that kind of helps you along the way. Windows Performance Analysis Tools, another good one. Data Encryption Toolkit for mobile PCs. So just a few useful tools that you can utilize in order to make your system a little more user-friendly or productive for yourself. All right, remember how I said XP was beloved by most businesses and nobody ever wanted to leave it? Well, Windows 7 and 8, they heard that call and they were like, you know what? All right, we'll give you a little bit of a reprieve, because a lot of companies built software specifically to run on Windows XP. And unfortunately, they might have had to make massive changes to that software or start over from scratch to make it so that it works on the newer versions. So if you have homegrown software where you've developed it for a specific operating system, this can be very costly and very scary to try to do something like this. So they added what is called a virtual XP mode on the professional, enterprise, and ultimate levels. And it allowed you to run applications as if it was Windows XP. So that bought you some time in order to upgrade your systems or redo your programs as needed. I'm not going to say a lot of companies wait to the last minute to try to do upgrades or anything like that, but sometimes it's exactly what they do. And this gave them a little bit of a buffer. Questions so far?
Do you have to upgrade your computer? You can't just keep it in the version like you like?
Yes, you can keep it in the version you like. However, over time, it starts to become a security risk. So over time, they stop patching for vulnerabilities. They stop upgrading security. They stop supporting that software. And that's end of life cycle. So you can maintain that software for some time, because I think there is actually a requirement that they maintain the software for X amount of years after they've gone to a newer version. So you can hold on to it for a while. Apple does this thing where it's based off of the model of your computer, not its capabilities, but the model of your computer, whether or not you can upgrade. I don't particularly like that, because if I do upgrades in place on my computer, I should be able to upgrade to the newer systems. But if you're not able to upgrade to the newest system, they will continue to provide patch and security support for up to 3 years after you're no longer allowed to upgrade. So long-winded way of saying, yes, you can do that for a time. If you exceed that time, your data becomes significantly higher risk.
So basically, after 3 years, Apple just wants you to buy a new product because they wouldn't support your security. No.
Well, I think
even if it's an older generation.
Yeah, well, what it is, so like, yeah, I have an older generation, and they allow me to upgrade it for a time. So like maybe for 5 or 6 years, I can continue to upgrade to the newest operating system. And after 5 or 6 years, they will not let me upgrade anymore. Then at that point, I have about 3 years, so up to 10 years with the computer. Almost. My last desktop that I had with them, I had for 10 years. It still works, but it's no longer being supported with security. It's no longer being supported with operating system or patches. So I use it as a training computer for my kids, and there's just nothing sensitive on it. So it's still functional, but I just wouldn't put anything sensitive on it.
Yeah, my laptop now can't update no more. It's too old, so I'm in that window.
Understood. 3 years is a long time for some computer equipment. Although I think my wife still has a MacBook Pro that's like 25 years old, and it still works.
Oscar has a good question in chat.
Yes, Oscar. Yes, that is essentially what it's about the same thing as that. Yeah, Oscar. I think this version is running it almost like a virtual box. What we are talking about, I think, is similar to, it's very similar. A distinction without a difference, I guess you could say. All right. Windows Easy Transfer, or WET. This feature is, one of the few that you can use to migrate accounts from Vista to Windows 7, or from Windows 7 to 8, 8.1, or to migrate to 10. We have to be aware of upgrade paths, because sometimes we can't just make a clear jump. Like, you can't clearly jump from Vista to Windows 10. So you would have to go from like Windows or Vista to 7, and then from 7 you can jump to 10 for some versions. So we have to be aware of what's called the upgrade path. However, if you want to go from Vista to 10, you would use what's called the user state migration tool itself, and this transfers the files, accounts, folders, all that stuff, the settings that you like, from your older version to the newer version. So if you're going just from 7 to 8, or Vista to 7, or 7 to 10, or 8 to 10, you could use the WET. If you're going from Vista all the way to 10, you would need to use the USMT, user state migration tool. System restore. Let's see here. Kevin, can you read for us, please?
Can you hear me now?
I absolutely can.
Alrighty. System restore. System restore appears in Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 8.1, and Windows 10. It allows you to restore the system to a previous point in time. Oh, what we just talked about. There was a question, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
To create a restore point, you should access the System Protection tab of the System Properties dialog box.
There you go. Thank you. Now, they say system restore is automatically turned on when you load your system. However, I would not trust this. You go in, make sure it's turned on if you're a Windows user, and then you can set a schedule of how often it's going to create restore points. So it could be every month, every week, every day. And what it's doing is taking essentially like a snapshot of your system settings and the operating system the way it is. If you're going to do any major upgrade to your system, create a manual restore point before you upgrade. That way, if you do an upgrade and you don't like the way it's interacting with your systems, the stuff's not working, it's too buggy, it's not enjoyable for you, you can go back to a previous restore point prior to you installing that recent update. This works for your system settings and then the versions of the system you're using. It does not work for files. So if you accidentally delete files and stuff like that, it's not keeping copies of those files. Like if you delete a document or something like that. So that's what a system backup is for. That's a little different. This is system restore. So it goes back to previous versions of your system. So if you do not have this turned on your system, that's your homework for tonight. Go in, find your system restore, create a restore point and set a schedule. And then if ever you're going to put a newer version of something on there, create a restore point before you do. That way, if you don't like it, you can always go back to where you were. It's the redo button. Questions, comments? All right, 32-bit versus 64-bit. Danielle, why don't you kick us off for the second half here?
Okay, 32-bit versus 64-bit OS. 32-bit and 64-bit is the determined for the amount of data the processor CPU can process effectively. To run a 64-bit version of the operating system, a 64-bit processor must be part of the system architect. In most cases, it can also run 32-bit version. If the system architect is 32-bit, it will not run 64-bit operating system or application program. Another main difference between 34-bit and 64-bit is in how much memory it can recognize and use. 34-bit systems can only use up to 4 gigabytes of memory. In installing, anything more will go unused and unrecognized. The basic information about the computer is shown in the system applet in the control panel. It shows what version of the OS is installed, as well as the computer name, activation status, and system index rating.
Very good. So some chip architectures can run 64 and 32. Some run just 64. And there's never a case where a 32 can run a 64. Like you may be driving a Rabbit, but that Rabbit will, no matter how much you overclock that engine, is not going to be able to keep up with a Ferrari. But you can run a Ferrari slow enough to where it can keep pace with a Rabbit.
That's a good analogy.
I always love that one because there was a guy in Germany who took a Porsche 911, like a souped up Porsche, and built a Rabbit body around it. Like he took the frame off and built a Rabbit body around it. It was like 1 inch difference on all sides. And then he took it on the Autobahn. And like all these people were shocked because they're getting their doors blown off by a Rabbit. And then the dealerships were getting inundated with phone calls asking about the Rabbit that could go over 100 miles an hour. And all the dealerships were like, yeah, none of them do that.
Wow.
So some guy's like really expensive practical joke.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Oscar, thank you for the reminder. The files as they look in your system would be x86 or 64 for the 64-bit version. If you have a hybrid, it says x86/64. All right, one more little piece on the taskbar we need to be aware of is the Security Action Center. Tomas, can you please read for us, sir?
The Security Action Center is inside the control panel or can be accessed from the notification area by clicking on the flag in the system tray. This feature was first seen in Vista, Windows Security Center, and was renamed in Windows 7. The Action Center is included in all current versions of its main function to inform, hence the flag, when there is a security or a maintenance issue.
Wonderful. So you can set your level of alerts, like high, medium, low. This is usually how it goes. You get your new computer, you're like, I want to protect my computer. I'm going to set my alerts to high because I want to be aware of everything that's going on my computer because it's my brand new computer, it's my baby. I just spent a lot of money on this. I want to make sure everything's okay. Then that little notification area is going to start blowing up about every 10 to 15 seconds. Ding, 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 ding. And then after about an hour, hour and a half, you're going to get really frustrated and you're going to go in, you're going to turn that sucker off. When you should have it probably around the middle so that it alerts you for major things. But that's usually how that goes. The same thing happens with firewalls because firewalls block your communications with the outside world. People go in like, I want the strongest, most paranoid firewalls ever seen, and they set it to maximum strength, and then they get annoyed with having to authorize every little piece of communication that your computer has to make. And then they go in and they're like, okay, no firewall. You know, and so unfortunately you go the two extremes rather than hitting that middle ground. All right. Continuing on our security center. Let's see here. Oscar, can you read for us, please?
Security Center rolled into the Action Center in Windows 7. The Security Center interface shows the status of and allows you to configure the firewall, Windows Update, virus protection, spyware, and unwanted software protection, internet security settings, UAC, and network access protection.
Excellent. So we'll get into a lot of this stuff when we start talking about configurations. But it's kind of like your one-stop shop for the majority of your security protocols and systems within Windows. So, but we'll get into a lot of these in detail probably tomorrow. All right, UAC, or user account control. This is intended to prevent unintentional or unauthorized changes to the computer by prompting permission to continue or requiring the administrator password. You ever tried to change a file or upgrade things or change something in the security, and instantly that little window pops up and says, please enter your, administrator password. So you enter it in and then it lets you continue. That's the UAC at work. It's making sure you don't delete key things, and you don't want your kids coming in and making big changes to your computer when you're not looking. Stuff like that. UAC is there to kind of help prevent that from happening on the majority of the time. Windows Firewall, renamed Windows Defender Firewall because it sounded more robust. In Windows 10, essentially a firewall is managing traffic, internet network traffic coming in and out of your systems. And you have something that are called stateful and stateless firewalls, which we will get into when we start talking about networking and things like that. And they utilize the stateless ones utilize access control logs or access control lists, which basically says these are who are allowed to talk, these are who are not allowed to talk. And sometimes it could be only allow these people, everything else is denied, or only reject these people, everything else is permitted. So those are different types of firewall settings that can be established, and that is that typical piece that they use to determine who can talk and who can't. It's called the ACL, or access control list. But we will talk about that with networking a little bit more. All right, Windows Defender. It's a free anti-malware program included in Windows 7, 8, 8.1, and 10. It was originally just an anti-spyware program. And in 8.1, they upgraded it to include some antivirus as well. This is where we have to start paying close attention to our common terms we use. Remember we talked about like the difference between memory and storage? Like my system is out of storage, which is hard drive space, versus memory, which is my RAM or my short-term memory. Antivirus and anti-malware is another one of those sticking points. People usually say, do you have an antivirus on your system? Antivirus is a very, very specific thing, where anti-malware generally means it's a suite of tools. And malware encompasses a bunch of different nasty types of programs, including computer viruses. And we're going to get to learn about a lot of these when we start getting into security. All right, Event Viewer. IT, you'll become very familiar with Event Viewer. Something goes wrong big, we have to go to Event Viewer and look. Now, anything that is done on your computer, programs you access, the times you accessed it, what the programs are doing at that time, all that kind of fun stuff, anything that's being done on the computer, there's a log that basically lets you know what was going on, what was being accessed at what time. And you can look and see when systems have problems and crash. And then you can kind of work backwards and say, okay, these problems occurred at this time. What happened shortly before this? So you can go do systems logs. And these systems logs is kind of your research tool, you know, where you kind of go back and reconstruct the events that happened.
Can you turn it off?
What?
Can you turn it off?
Event viewer?
Yeah.
No, but you can alter logs. I'm not going to ask a follow-up to that.
No, I just
me too. I was thinking the same thing. I was like, why would you want to turn it
no,
off?
I just want to know because I know on my phone, like I don't
She's just curious.
no. I don't like apps to track me. Like they always ask, can I track you? They're so busy gathering your information.
Yes.
So I always turn stuff like that off. So maybe I'm doing damage by turning it off.
See, event viewer is keeping it on the system, but you know how when you log in, it says, do you want to share your event logs with Apple or with Microsoft? You can opt out of that and say, no, I do not want to share my logs with you. But as far as your personal system, yes, you probably want to keep that running because that can tell you when bad things happen, what happened.
Yeah, this one really helps you though, for sure. Yeah, errors, warnings, information, audit.
Absolutely. Especially if you're dealing with it on a network level. If I'm wrong, Greg, you know, please step in and let me know. On a network level, you can trace down the point of, you know, like point of origin, so to speak. Where did the original infection occur on the system and how it spread through the network based off of times and log events.
Absolutely. That's exactly why you want to keep it running.
You know, which also gets into the importance of synchronizing clocks, all that kind of fun stuff. All right. So all your logs in Event Viewer. All right. Ready Boost. Amazing, spectacular, wonderful technology. It allows you to take a USB drive and kind of use it like RAM. So if you're low on RAM for your system and it's cycling your hard drive way too much, you can do what's called a Ready Boost. So you can take a USB drive, has to have a minimum of 256 megabytes, which almost all USB drives at this point far exceed that. And then you can configure it for Ready Boost and use it like RAM for your computer. It's not going to be as efficient, but if you're ordering RAM and it hasn't arrived yet, or you know you need to upgrade your RAM or any of that stuff, this helps buy you time. So if you know you need to make that RAM upgrade, but you have to order it, it's going to take 5 or 6 days to get there. This allows the system to remain at least functional by increasing your RAM levels while you're waiting for these parts to come. It gives you just a little bit of an extra boost. Again, not as efficient, but still better than nothing. Questions with regards to Ready Boost? All right. Specific features for Windows 8 and 8.1. Greg, can you read for us, please?
Just about to step away. Okay. All right.
Hey, you know, I sense these things.
You did. All right, here we go. All right, Windows 8.1 made running the OS without a touchscreen easier and brought back a start button. It was basically a patch. Windows Store, since the GUI of Windows 8 is arranged through a series of apps, the Windows Store is where new apps can be purchased and are available for free. Multi-monitor taskbar. This addition This addition, seen in Windows 8, allows the taskbar to be visible when multiple monitors are being used. Previously, the taskbar would only be seen on the main computer. Microsoft Live Sign-In. This version of Windows requires a MS Live login, which is a free account using to interact with MS or Microsoft. In its simplest function, it can synchronize the desktop and the data between devices. The downfall of this is that it requires an internet connection to authenticate. Side-by-side app, Windows 8.1 allows you to run a Metro application and a desktop application at the same time, or up to 4 Metro apps at the same time. You have to explain all of this. I'm sure I'm not following.
So 8.1 brought back the start button. So remember 8, they got rid of the start button and everybody got upset.
Yes.
So 8.1 just brought back the start button. That was a special feature of 8.1. The start button has returned and there was much rejoicing among the people. So that was 8.1. Windows Store was now introduced because they're like, you know what? Apple's making a lot of money. We need to get in on this action. So they created their own version of the App Store, which allows you to purchase various applications that could be used on your system directly from their store rather than going to, say, Best Buy or your local computer store to order the software or purchase the software and then upload it. The multi-monitor taskbar, the little taskbar at the bottom of your screen used to only be on your primary screen. This allowed it to track across all monitors, so you didn't have to go all the way back to your main monitor, hit your start button each time. You could do it from any monitor, making it a little bit more user-friendly.
I forgot about that. Oh, yes. Okay.
Microsoft Live. Okay, go ahead.
No. I agree. I'm now realizing the evolution. I never really missed certain things. Now I'm really thinking back. I'm like, oh, those didn't come around until that time.
Yeah.
But yes.
Microsoft Live login, I believe, was an evolution of Xbox Live. They converted it to a Microsoft Live and kind of rolled the Xbox Live up into that, even to this day. If I'm not mistaken, if there's any Xbox fans out there, please correct me if I'm wrong. And it allows you to kind of synchronize across all of your devices because, again, they were probably looking at Apple and going, you know what? All their stuff basically just connects together and talks to each other. Regardless, because they have to have an iTunes account or an Apple account in order, to interact or purchase these items. Why don't we do the same thing on our end? And so they do something that is quite similar. I'm not sure about how seamless of a experience that was because, again, I wasn't using Windows for the Vista 8.1. I barely used 10. And then the downfall of that particular item is it required you have an internet connection in order to be able to authenticate. So it made usage of your systems without having live access at that moment significantly more difficult. And in the side-by-side app, that was where you could kind of snap things in, where you can just press the Windows key and the L, and it would throw that one application, or it was the Windows key and the left arrow, and it would throw that application up to the left-hand side, hit the Windows key in the right on another application, it would throw it up to the other side. And so you'd have the two apps running side by side. You didn't have to spend all that time adjusting the window sizes by clicking them and moving them along. It would just snap them into place, making it much faster and more user-friendly. Except if you're using Metro apps, which were smaller programs, you could use up to 4 at a time, breaking your monitor up into quadrants. Questions?
What was the original name for Metro again? I forgot.
What, Metro UI?
There was a rename for some reason, from Metro to something else. What was that whole thing? It wasn't a book, wasn't an early reading. Maybe.
What, they changed the name of Metro?
Yeah, because of I guess metrosexual. There was something to do with some social issues.
I
and
had
they-
not heard of it being renamed. I could be completely missing the boat here, but I had not heard of it being renamed.
Yeah,
He's
yeah. I forgot
looking.
the
I
name.
see Oscar.
Yeah, I read
renamed it.
something like that too.
Yeah,
In the
they
beginning of
renamed
the
it because
book.
of litigation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
What did they rename it to?
Metro something. They because Metro, they still use the Metro name.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but they changed the other word.
Yeah.
I mean, because like Metro, just, you know, short for Metropolis.
Oh, it was in the. Is on my guy. It was Mike Myers' book. That's the reason why I can't find it here.
Okay.
Search. Yeah.
All right. Well, if you find it, let me know, please. I'd
Okay,
be interested. I'd be interested to know that one. I haven't read Mike Myers' book except for certain sections. All right. Windows 10 specific features that we need to be aware of. You have App Locker. It allows for policies to be created in the group policy where you can set rules for all the computers in a particular network if you wish, to control the access to applications, whether they're allowed to download other applications, whether they're allowed to open them up and use them, various things like that. Like you don't necessarily want a employee with nefarious thoughts in mind going in and accessing your firewall protections and turning off your firewalls, right? So you would deny them access to that using something like App Locker. Next, branch cache. So it can be operated as like a client. Microsoft can be operated as client server technology that allows for caching or storing commonly accessed files at a branch office location. So you typically have a cache file on your computer. Every time you go to Google to run a search, it's not loading the entire page every time you go there. It is storing a cache or a picture of that site on your computer. So when you go to access it again, it's pretty much utilizing the version you have on your computer and maybe just updating a couple things to make the experience happen faster. So that is called a cache file. Oh, Windows UI. Thank you. Thank you, Oscar. I'll have to put that one in my memory for future reference. Branch cache does this on a office level rather than an individual computer level. So say, like I worked in transportation, we always had to go to the Department of Energy multiple times a day to look up fuel costs by region. And this was every single person in the office would have to go access this information on a regular basis. And it was updated once a day or something like that. So what we would use is a branch cache version of this site. So it saved a lot of internet traffic. It didn't have to go request this page for every single computer every single day, each time they wanted to access it. No, it kept a cache of that site on our branch cache. It also works for common files as well. Like if you need like, you know, quarterly TPS reports, if you're an office space person, you know, if you're gonna, you know, you need to access those on a regular basis, it would have a branch cache to where, you know, the most recent updates were stored in a cache file for you. All right. Next, we have direct access, which provides a method of automatic connection for VPNs between the client and the main office. So if you work from home a lot or you work remotely, you can set it up utilizing an automatic connection through your VPN. When you log in, if you're using like single sign-on, it connects to the office, and then your office views you as if you're physically on site. Questions, comments, concerns?
I remember having something on the 1002 related to branch cache.
Branch cache?
Mm-hmm.
I've repressed most of that memory, but I
But I
remember
don't want
this.
Can you give me some kind of example of what they would ask in regards to that? Because I'm curious how to lock this into my memory.
I just remember I knew that that was the answer to the question.
Branch cache is
Okay.
likely going to be a definitional question, like where would you store temporary files for branch
okay.
access? You know, for access for an entire office.
Okay.
And then it would be branch cache. So it would be more of a definitional type question for something like this
Okay.
on the A+.
And they wouldn't try to trip you up with like, app data and, and all the, because different ways of caching things. They wouldn't do that, right?
Typically, no. It was
Okay.
it was pretty clear what they were asking when they asked something like that.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yeah, it was direct. I knew directly that that was it, the answer to it.
Okay. Thanks.
All righty. We should now be able to describe the purpose and function of an operating system. At least have an idea like what a kernel is. We should now be able to identify the main features of a Microsoft operating system. If anybody in this class misses arrow, I'm going to be thoroughly upset.
Do
And
they tell you
finally,
the one you got wrong?
wait, what was that?
Do they tell you the ones you got wrong?
No, I'm saying when I give the class tests.
Oh.
They won't tell you specifically what questions you got wrong. They'll say what objectives you missed. They'll say you need to study this more. And then compare and contrast the features of Windows 7, 8, 8.1, and 10. All right, any questions, comments, concerns?